Hey folks, this is Dan from the Conan Chronology here. When Savage Sword relaunched in 2023, I had my doubts a little bit. One, I had never heard of Titan Comics before that. Two, Marvel's Savage Sword in the 2010s had been kind of iffy, and the spirit of the original is kind of a tough act to follow. So I was cautiously optimistic at best when it was relaunched in 2023. I am happy to say that all my expectations have been surpassed, and this has been a consistently excellent book for the last 2 years. Now we've got 12 issues of Savage Sword out, so I thought, why not take the time to kind of recap and ultimately rank the 12 existing issues of Savage Sword. Starting with issue number 1 here, we've got a wonderful Joe Jusko cover. I've said before that I'm not always a Joe Jusko fan. I think sometimes his art is a little janky, but I think this one is a pretty cool cover to relaunch the title with, especially because Jusko is one of the OGs. He worked on the original Savage Sword back in the 70s and 80s, so I think that is a really good sign. I think they knew what they were doing when they picked him as their cover artist for the first issue. Also, not to mention, Roy Thomas starts the book with an introduction essay. Now, it might have just been a totally soulless work for hire essay, I don't know, but I think it's a really good sign when you basically have the guy who launched this thing co-sign on the new version of it. The A story in this one is by John Arcudi with art by Max von Fafnir, and Arcudi wrote 6 issues, I think, of Savage Sword back in the 80s. I think he wrote from a few issues from like the 150s to the 180s, somewhere in there, and it's a pretty solid start to the new title. I won't go as far as to say that the story is incredible, but Conan does fight a dinosaur in it, and that's pretty cool. Now, it is like a war story, and I always find war stories a little less interesting, just personally, than a lot of, like thief stories or stories in which Conan is operating by himself. I find them slightly less compelling, but it's a pretty good start to the title. Fafnir's art is kind of it almost looks a little digital, and I'm not sure if that's because of digital coloring, and in this case it would be digital shading since it's a black and white book, but it looks very modern, and he really likes to put Conan in this kind of ram's horn helmet that you see in a bunch of his art. But it's not a bad start to the title. It has a B story, which is the first part of a Solomon Kane story by Patch Zerker, and that one surprised me. Now, I am not a huge Solomon Kane fan. He's okay, but as far as like Robert E. Howard characters go, Conan is unabashedly my favorite. Conrad and Curwen after that. El Barak probably third, but Solomon Kane is kind of down there as far as my own personal ranking goes. So I was really pleasantly surprised with how much I liked this story. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I think Patch Zerker has a real feel for Solomon Kane. I think von Fafnir's art in the A story does a really good job of portraying the occasional darkness of Conan. He does a lot with shading around the eyes that I think really conveys how Conan is not your average, he's not really a goody two-shoes. He's not like an always upstanding character, and I think it conveys that really nicely. Now, Savage Sword of Conan number 2 was truly my introduction to Grim Jim Zub. I didn't immediately get on board with the regular Conan the Barbarian title. In fact, I've always been kind of slow to pick up the Conan title over Savage Sword. I'd been reading Savage Sword for probably 10 years before I picked up a single Conan the Barbarian title. I was just always kind of afraid of it not being the same feeling, seeing as it was constrained by the comics code. And it was less that when the new one launched, but I wasn't immediately ready to add it to my pull slot. I hadn't read anything by Jim Zub before, although I think he has quite a resume, knowing him now. So this was my introduction to Jim Zub, and it could not have been a cooler introduction. This features a story called Leaving the Garden with artist Richard Pace, and it is a fantastic, weird, offbeat Conan story. And when I say weird, I mean it in like the Weird Tales sense of the word. The like off-putting sorcery kind of stuff. It's a really great story about Conan coming across a village where they kind of pay homage to this horrifying, disgusting eldritch god. And it makes your skin crawl, and it makes you kind of tuck your legs into bed at night. It's a really good creepy story. We have a second part of the B story by Patch Zerker again for Solomon Kane. We get Chainmail for the first time, which is the letters page. I somehow ended up with a B cover here, which is by Nick Marinkovich. And I guess they just, at Time Warp Comics, where I go every week, I guess they just plopped this into my pull slot, and I never noticed that it was not the A cover at the time, and so I'm going to have to track down the A cover at some point. It's pretty cool, and it goes along with the story, but I always want to have the A cover. You know, you got to have, like, the classic. I don't know why. It just feels better for me. No, there's a lot less in this issue. There's a lot fewer stories, and they are longer stories, but I don't want you to think for 1 second that that means there's less to love in this. In fact, I think issue 2 is a lot stronger than issue 1, and I'll get to my rankings at the end. But I think issue 2 is a big step up because it feels just a lot more focused. Like, everything is given the appropriate amount of time to breathe, and I think ultimately the package is a lot better for it. Now, speaking of being introduced to Jim Zub with the last issue, issue 3 was my introduction to Alex Horley with this gorgeous Alex Horley A cover here. It is a beautiful oil painting, and I gotta say, Alex Horley, as far as covers go, every single time knocks it out of the park. He's not Frazetta, and he's not Kim Kelly. He is his own thing entirely. Conan feels strong and dark, and there's always like an element of fantasy to it, but he has such bold colors, and the action looks so cool every time. If every single Conan cover from now until the end of time had an Alex Horley cover, I probably wouldn't complain. Now, the A story in this one is called Wolves of the Tundra. It's by Frank Thierry and Kerry Nord, and I'm going to say something a little controversial here. I think I am the only person on the planet who doesn't seem to be a big Kerry Nord fan when it comes to Conan. His run on the Dark Horse title with Kurt Busiek is universally loved, except by me, I guess. There's something about his art that just feels dated to the 2000s to me in a way that I don't love for Conan. I feel like Conan art, there's a lot of ways to do great Conan art if it feels like, you know, otherworldly, like it's been around for hundreds or thousands of years, works. If it feels like it's from the 30s, it works. If it feels like it's from the 70s, it works. But something about feeling a little more modern than that, sometimes, like, it doesn't do it for me. And Kerry Nord comes across that way for me. This one is definitely not my favorite A story in the title. It's probably my least favorite A story. As far as the leads go. It does have a very good, funny ending, though, that kind of brings everything back around. It does have an Alex Horley pinup in it that is so sick looking. I can't say enough good things about Horley. And I'm so glad we got Conan issue number 25, where he just did the entire thing like that. That is such a crowning achievement. But staying on Savage Sword, my man John C. Hawking shows up in a bunch this issue. I've gone on record saying that John C. Hawking is one of the best Conan writers today. They preview City of the Dead in the book. There's also a John C. Hawking biography at one point, which I think is really cool. I think we should do more stuff like that. Sometimes biographies of authors, especially ones that are really heavily informed, are really hard to come by. I've been trying to track down a lot of information about the pulp writer C.L. Moore for a while, and there's not a lot out there. So I think more biographies, I think that kind of thing is really good for preservation. So I'm glad John C. Hawking has a biography in here. He's a fantastic writer. We get part 3 of Patch Zerker's Solomon Kane story, and it finishes strong. The guy really understands Solomon Kane very well. Like I said, I was surprised with how good that story was and how much it resonated with me, since I'm not a big Solomon Kane fan. But he sticks the landing. There's a poem by Jim Zub with art by Rob De La Torre. And you can't beat that combination. They're phenomenal together. And then there's a silent story called The Lure of the Pit Creature. And I love experiments like that. I love wordless comics because it really lets the art shine, and it really it focuses in on visual storytelling when that's the only tool that you have, and I always think that's a pretty interesting product. And Lure of the Pit Creature, just a really fun story as well. Now, Savage Sword number 4 is the first time that I bought variant covers for this title, and I actually did it by accident. I have never been a variant cover guy. I have a public school teacher's salary, so I'm not speculating on the books, and I don't have the money to buy all kinds of variants. And half the time, I feel like Marvel and DC are just trying to scam me out of an extra $5 anyway. But I did this one by accident, and I kind of just accepted my fate at that point. Originally, I bought the A cover, which is by David Palumbo, not a name that I'm really familiar with. I do think it's kind of cool. This art reminds me of that kind of like computer generated art from like the 2000s that was on games and stuff like that. And it's not computer generated, but it has that similar vibe. And then like a month later, I went to pick up my pull slot at the comic shop, and this variant cover by Maria Wolf was in there. This is the B cover, and I couldn't remember if I had bought it. I had like a little brain fart, and I was like, wait, don't I already have this one? Well, if they put it in there, I guess I must not. Like, I was too trusting. So ultimately, I bought the other variant by accident, and I got home and I realized, oh, well, I have two of them now. Now, issue 4 of Savage Sword is kind of an interesting point in the book. It is, as you can see, the Battle of the Blackstone tie-in issue, and that was Jim's first like big event at Titan. I think Titan and Heroic Signatures realize that if you are going to do a crossover with a lot of Robert E. Howard characters, most of those characters don't carry near the amount of cultural currency that Conan of Cimmeria does. So issue 4 kind of operates as like an introducing the team sort of deal, because ultimately Battle of the Blackstone is kind of like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen across time, with a bunch of Howard characters. It's like a classic team up story through the centuries. So this issue has a lot of stories in it, and as you can see with the credits at the bottom of the issue, we get a lot of voices here. It introduces us to tons of Howard characters in their own stories. We get a Brisa introduction. We got Conrad and Curwen, which is by Jeff fucking Shanks, man. Jeff Shanks, really cool guy. I've exchanged a lot of emails with him. He writes the essays in the back of the regular Conan title. He is an archaeologist. He's a preservationist. He's in charge of Howard Days now, it seems. Dude is extremely busy, and who knew he also wrote fiction? I think it's pretty cool. I'm not sure if that is his first fiction credit, his first comic credit, but we get a great Conrad and Curwen story from Jeff. We get a Dark Agnes story that I wrote in my notes here. I wrote, it is a very anime style art style in this short issue, and it doesn't really work for me. I don't know if it might work for other people, but it feels like this kind of like horny magical girlfriend anime style that I thought set it out from the rest of the book in kind of a bad way. Obviously, you want something to stand out, but it felt kind of like it stuck out like a sore thumb. So it wasn't my favorite, but it ends with an El Borak story by Ron Mars and Mike Perkins. That's very cool. El Borak has been climbing my list of favorite Howard characters in recent months. And it ends with this like Avengers style team up shot by Rob De La Torre that kind of brings all the characters together. And of course, you would have to read the actual comic event to see how it all plays out. And that kind of brings me back to the actual lead story in here. It's the Conan part of the book, and it's called Birthright in Black. And it's kind of strange. It isn't so much of a full narrative as it is this kind of narrated vignette that it's kind of poetic and kind of disorienting in a way. It feels kind of mystical, and it introduces this idea of the Black Stone that Jim will use throughout the Battle of the Blackstone miniseries. But if you only read that and did not read the rest of like this issue or the rest of the miniseries, you might be like, what the heck was that? I don't know what to make of it. So I think it's kind of an interesting move rather than doing something more traditional. He disorients us. So it makes for kind of a strange reading experience. I have to say, the Nick Marinkovich pinup in here that starts the book, one of the coolest pieces of art that has come out of the Titan era of Conan comics. I love that thing, and I hope they use it on other stuff as well. Issue 5 brings us another beautiful Alex Horley cover. And I love with this one, I don't think there's any way you'd be able to see it in the video, but if I put up a graphic, you might see it. You can actually see like the texture of the canvas. And you see what I meant here about colors, these strong greens and oranges, they just look so beautiful together. This one begins with a Tim Sale Conan pinup that is really unique as far as their pinups go. His Conan is much more lithe, almost like Barry Windsor Smith. And it's really cool to see an artist like Tim Sale, who's known, for Batman and Daredevil and characters like that, to tackle Conan as well. I gotta say, the A story that is it's part 1 in here and it's finished in issue 6 is so fucking good. It's called The Ensorcelled. It's by Jason Aaron and Jeff Isherwood, and this combination is incredible. Jason Aaron is a great modern day writer, and Jeff Isherwood has been around since the old Savage Sword days, and his art is just beautiful. He commented on my blog one time to tell me to stop saying speech bubbles and start saying word balloons, and I absolutely deferred to him. I said, absolutely, Mr. Isherwood, whatever you say, Mr. Isherwood. This story is so incredible. It is thematically rich. It's a King Conan story that pits Conan with a witch, which I feel like would make a lot of people mad. And if you just told me Conan teams up with a witch in this story against priests of Mitra, I would be like, that sounds like this person doesn't understand Conan the Barbarian at all. And the actual result could not be further from the truth. I think Jason Aaron really understands the Robert E. Howard civilization versus barbarism story, but in this way he kind of updates it. There's this great line where this captured witch tells Conan, life has no meaning to a man who commands armies. And I think that shows that he really understands the beating heart of Conan deeply. Now, I think there are people who are going to disagree with me about this, but this story is so critical of civilization structures like the church and like government and the justice system in a way that allows men to feel as though they have bloodless hands because they have abdicated this to these systems, but it's clear that these men are doing evil works in the name of something that they have sullied that used to be good or is intended to be good or they say is good. And so to see Conan side with the lesser of two evils in this scenario, or perhaps to side with the person who has been deemed evil by society but is not, I think that is profoundly Conan the Barbarian. It's very cool. It's a very unique story. This one has another almost wordless story in Damn Thing in the Water, once again by Jim Zub and Rob De La Torre. I guess that scripting job would have been pretty easy for Jim, since it has like one line at the end, and that is once again a lot of fun. It finishes with a young Conan story called Forged. And I'm not always overly interested in young Conan stories. I feel like the Siege at Venarium is such a perfect birth story for Conan. Obviously he's not born at the Siege of Venarium, but Conan the Barbarian that you and I know and the character we like is born at the Siege of Venarium. So I've never felt like a need for young Conan stories. And this one is fine. It's fun. It's by Michael Kogi, I think you say his name, and Dan Parsons. And it works. It's okay. It's just so incredibly overshadowed by the awesome work of Jason Aaron and Jeff Isherwood in the A story. Now, issue 6 is The Ensorcelled Part 2 by the same creative team. I feel like I've said pretty much everything I need to say about it. At least the lead story, with issue number 5, but I do think it's cool that it ends with King Khan. So Jason kind of brings in a couple of different continuities. He references some of the stuff from the Marvel books of the 2010s. He references the Spider God of Zamora, so I'm almost kind of bringing in Conan and the Spider God, and he references King Khan, who is Conan's son, King Conan II. So it brings in some of the DeCamp and Carter stuff in a way that is kind of interesting just at the end, almost as a fun little nugget without fully going all in on those continuities. We get a prose story called Madness on the Mound, which is essentially a sequel to The Frost Giant's Daughter, and that's a fun one. And it finishes with a Dark Agnes story that sticks out much less this time. It's a lot more in line with the rest of the book, and I liked it better this time. Maybe you liked the gooning anime style of the first one, but I like the second Dark Agnes story a little bit better. Now, Savage Sword number 7 is the issue that I accepted. I am a massive sucker, and I'm just gonna have to be okay with that. because when I picked up my pull slot at the comic shop, they put the A cover in my pull slot, and it has this gorgeous Alex Horley cover, as Horley always does. And then I walked over to the comic rack, and I saw the B cover, which is by Sean Joyce, and this thing captured me, and I went, "Oh man, oh, I'm gonna do it, aren't I? I'm gonna buy this variant cover." It's just, it's so classic. It has the 70s logo on it, and it kind of looks like it might be like a Juiceco painting or something from the 70s title. I just had to have it, so I'm a total sucker, and I will just admit that from now on. And from here on out, I was like, I'm just going to be this way. Titan, congratulations, you have my money. So I've been buying variant covers ever since. I figure you can buy variants for like one book, right? Like, that's not too crazy. I'm not going to, blow my entire paycheck on it. But Savage Sword #7 also, in addition to the Return to the 70s cover here, features my boy Roy Thomas coming back. And I have obviously made it clear that I'm a huge Roy Thomas fan. So much of what I write about and what I've covered on this YouTube channel is Roy Thomas centric, and he's a fantastic writer. I know a lot of people have kind of soured on Roy for his sort of seeming, he wants credit for Wolverine, whatever. That's neither here nor there. It's nothing to do with Conan. This one is a loose adaptation of a Rudyard Kipling story, because that's what Roy does. Roy takes someone else's story and he retrofits Conan to it. And you might dislike that. I think it's fine. I love seeing Roy Thomas script a story that was plotted by somebody else. I don't know which Rudyard Kipling story it is. I feel like most people are just familiar with the Jungle Book. But it explicitly takes place within Roy's Marvel timeline. It says in the opening that the Hyrcanian War of the Tarim, which I made a video about a couple of weeks ago, has just ended, and it features a couple of characters from that timeline. So that's kind of cool to see it come back. But Roy always lets you know he works in his Roy Thomas timeline, and there are no other ones as far as he is concerned. Now, Rob De La Torre does the art for the A story here, which I think is so cool. Obviously, Robert E. Howard has been dead for a very long time. L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter have both been dead for a long time. Not as long as Howard. But Roy Thomas is basically like the oldest Conan creator that is still creating Conan stuff. He started working on Conan in 1970, and everyone, working in the 50s, 60s, 30s, they have all passed. So essentially, this is the closest we can get to old meets new. This is not OG Conan, but as OG as it gets for people who are still alive, meeting new generations. So Roy Thomas writing with Rob De La Torre scripting is pretty fucking cool. I love that. I think it's such a cool confluence of old and new. It implements Jebel Sog from Beyond the Black River, and it has some really cool art and character designs in it. I kind of wish the story was better than it is. After having said that I'm a huge Roy Thomas fan, I think it's a rather small story that is not Roy Thomas's best. It's still very entertaining, but I think for what it's worth, I enjoyed the art more than I actually enjoyed the narration and the prose and the dialogue in this one, which is unusual for me, being such a Roy Thomas fanboy. This one also has a breakdown. It feels kind of like an ad for the Mortal Kombat 1 DLC featuring Arnold's Conan, which is kind of different. You don't see a lot of movie Conan stuff going on with Titan, which is fine by me. The movie is okay, but it can kind of just go over there. It feels like its own thing. So it includes that. I'm a Mortal Kombat fan, but I haven't ever owned that game. I haven't owned an MK game in quite a while, probably since the 360 days. And it finishes with a Patch Zerker story of Breckenridge Elkins. And I really like that one because I'm from Colorado and I've spent a lot of time in the town of Breckenridge. I'm not a skier, but it's a nice place to visit for a day. And he gets Breckenridge Elkins as well as he gets Solomon Kane. It is a fun little story. Breckenridge Elkins is such, to use modern parlance, such a himbo. He's a cool character. So it's a great ending to a pretty solid issue. Now, issue 8 is an artist showcase. It has 7 different pin-ups from different Conan artists, and if you look at the credits at the bottom of the issue, there are a lot of names down there. This thing, it truly feels like it's a celebration of the artists rather than the authors, and I think that's needed. I've said before, I need to pay more attention to the art and celebrate those artists more than I need to naturally do what I do, where I'm always focused on the writer. So I think that is what makes this issue unique. It's got an A story by Dennis Culver and Chris Burnham, and while I don't really love the very modern art style of that story, the Vermin Queen in it is horrifying, disgusting, absolutely grotesque. So it does have that weird tales element, and I think that kind of saves it for me. The B story is called When I Was Young, I Met a King by Fred Kennedy and Marco Ruby. And I do not have to try to focus on the art for this one. Marco Ruby's art is so cool. He eschews regular panel design entirely. There is not a single rectangular panel in his entire story. Everything is made out of like whooshing wind and vortexes and roots and sword edges and stuff like that. It is so cool and it is so unique. As Todd McFarlane likes to say, he could have a story that was written by his dog if the art is good enough. There is a poem by Grim Jim Zub with illustrations by Dan Panosian, and Dan Panosian is a wonderful veteran of comics. He always puts in good work. I especially love his character builds. They always look so strong and so classic. There's a Cormac Fitzjeffrey C story by Zach Davison, once again with art by Max von Fafnir, who was the lead artist for issue number 1. There is a John C. Hawking prose story, which I once again loved. And this finishes so strong. This finishes with the best story of the entire bunch. It is called The Wuthering by Liam Sharp. And that was my introduction to Liam Sharp. I had never heard of the guy before. But The Wuthering is just a few pages long. It's probably 5 or 6 pages. And it is so gorgeous. Everything that Liam Sharp does when it comes to Conan is so melancholy and so creepy in this classic fantasy kind of way. There is so much pathos and sadness in his stories he is so hard to not love. The guy is incredible. He has a really singular voice as far as creators on this book go. And it is the first time that I think the last story in the issue has been my favorite one. And I almost forgot to mention, we also have a Dynamite Alex Horley cover. Like always, we were eating good this month. Issue number 9 is pretty special in that it has a Neal Adams A cover. I don't know how common it is for artists to have their estates or corporations unearth unused art or maybe rarely seen art and repurpose it for covers like this. Neal Adams had passed away by the time this book came out. Neal Adams is an incredible legend, one of the GOATs. I met him at Denver Comic-Con several years ago. I was having a very small panel with my friend Zach, and so we got exhibitor badges, and we got to walk around the show floor early. And, we're just poking around, seeing what kind of deals there might be, when I see Neal Adams a couple of booths away, and he looks so bored, and he just kind of waves to us, and I'm like, Zach, holy fuck, that's Neal Adams, dude. We got to go talk to him. And I am always probably too cautious when meeting famous people. I kind of rush through things because I always assume I'm annoying them, and I don't want to waste their time. But dude was so kind. He found out that we were both teachers, and he spent the next 10 minutes complaining about Trump's grammar on Twitter. So that was very funny. But obviously, Neal Adams, one of the total GOATs. I would love to know the story of how this painting ended up on the cover of Savage Sword. I also bought the Alex Horley B cover. Incredible as always, great action here. For issue 9, Patch Zerker gets upgraded from the Backups with Solomon Kane to a Conan the Barbarian A story along with Valeria. It is a direct sequel to Red Nails. I know Red Nails at this point has many possible prequels and sequels, and this might be the best of them. Conan and Valeria go on a kind of island pirate adventure, and Zerker's visual storytelling is absolutely at its peak here. He does so much with his panels and says so much by saying so little. Conan and Valeria bicker kind of like an old married couple, which is fun to see. It's reminiscent of the time in Conan the Barbarian when Conan and Belit have to pose as a merchant and his wife, and they get to bicker like that. It's a lot of fun to see. It's kind of a different dynamic for Conan. And I have to say that the B story is a Cull story. Most of it is dedicated just to that Patch Zerker story, and the B story is a Cull story. And it's okay. I'm not a huge Cull guy, and so Cole has never been super compelling to me. He's kind of like if you took King Conan and then stripped away a lot of the elements that I find most interesting. So it's fine. I will say it's short. For issue 10, we've got a beautiful, very purplish, bluish Alex Horley B cover, and then perhaps the most interesting, maybe the most offbeat cover of the entire series. We have a Mike Mignola A cover, Mike Mignola of Hellboy fame, that does not feature Conan at all. And I think this made some people mad. On the Conan subreddit when this came out, a lot of people were kind of upset that this had Sailor Steve Costigan on the cover instead of Conan. I'm not against it. It's a really cool piece of art. It's different. A lot of people were arguing maybe it shouldn't have been the A cover, but if you didn't like it, you could buy the B cover. I don't know. I think it's really cool, and Mike Mignola is a legend in his own right. Issue 10 brought us to our second big League of Extraordinary Gentlemen style team-up crossover that was spearheaded by Jim Zub for the Scourge of the Serpent storyline. Now, the A story in this one is Twice Paid Debts by Jim Zub and Doug Braithwaite, and when I read this issue of Savage Sword, I was not caught up on the regular Conan the Barbarian title, and I didn't like it very much. It was obviously missing quite a bit, and so when I got caught up on the regular Conan title and then went back and reread the A story here, I saw how much it tied into the regular Conan title, and I was like, oh, okay. And it was much better on the second read. This is definitely a tie-in that just straight continues a story that we saw in Conan the Barbarian. And so if you read Savage Sword number 10, do yourself a favor and read the corresponding Conan issues. I don't remember what they are off the top of my head, but it makes the story much, much better. Doug's art looks so cool here in black and white. I'm not an expert on comic art, but I think it's brushed. I think it's got heavy brushwork on it that makes it look really cool. For the B story, we get a riff on Spear and Fang, which was Robert E. Howard's first published story. I don't think it's that incredible. I think we're seeing an artist who's on his way to the top and very much still at their first rung in that story. So I'm gonna say it might be controversial, but I think I like Jim Zub and Mike Ruth's variation on Spear and Fang a little better than the original. But that was timely because Spear and Fang turned 100 years old this last year. And this story finishes with the C story of Sailor Steve Costigan. It's by Jim and Roberto De La Torre. It's really fun. I hadn't really read any Sailor Steve Costigan prior to this, but it ties in really nicely with the Haunters in the Ring and the Scourge of the Serpent storyline. And I'm kind of sitting here like, man, can we get a Jim Zub, De La Torre, Sailor Steve ongoing? It's a really unique flavor. You get this normal human being who is like a boxer, a bare knuckle boxer, back alley kind of guy, having exotic adventures all over the world. Like that sounds like a pretty good time. This one ties a lot more strongly into the Scourge of the Serpent storyline than Birthright in Black did for the Battle of the Black Stone storyline, and I think it's stronger for it. I think this is much more of a must-have issue if you're trying to read everything in the Scourge of the Serpent miniseries, and I really enjoyed it, despite it having Sailor Steve on the cover. For issue 11, we have an Alex Horley A cover. It is this beautiful red, rippling muscle, very cool action pose, but I would like to introduce you to the star of the show for issue 11. It is Liam Sharp himself. Now, the A story for this issue, along with the cover, is called Tattered Wings, written and drawn by Liam Sharp, and it is so good. Like I said before, this guy is a singular voice. He is extremely unique. He does what he's going to do, and it will be incredible as long as you don't constrain him. I think this is kind of a controversial issue. When it came out, I saw a couple of complaints. I saw people saying that it was too high fantasy, not enough sword and sorcery. Some people said that it was too tropey. I disagree. Some people said that they felt like the ending was kind of that, ooh, it was all a dream kind of situation, and I don't think that's true. I think it was much more along the lines of Frost Giant's daughter, where it's like, was it all a dream? No, it actually happened, even though you might, like, I could see how you'd get that. The coolest thing in this book is the art. There are so many unique panel designs and panel layouts that every single page is a total treat. If you didn't read a single word of the text and you just flipped through the art with this story, you would be treated to an absolute feast for the eyes. The thing is incredible. Liam Sharp is a god. He can have my firstborn. This is a phenomenal issue, and I'm going to have to track down more Liam Sharp stuff because the guy does so much cool work. The B story in this issue is by Ron Mars and Danny Earls. It's called Wolves and Witches, and it is a Cormac McArt story that opens really similarly to the Gods of Bal Sagoth, which is not a Cormac McArt story. And that is okay, but it's just overshadowed so strongly by the incredible work of Liam Sharp here. If you did not like this issue, leave a comment below because I'd like to know. I'd like to know why. I'm not going to argue with you or something. I'd like to. I'd like to hear what you didn't like about this issue because it seemed kind of controversial when it came out. I personally loved it. This brings us to the most recent issue of Savage Sword that has been put on the market right now. It's issue 12. I picked this up from the comic shop a week or two ago. We do have a Jeff Isherwood B cover. And this one is pretty cool. I love Jeff Isherwood. I don't think he ever does a bad job. His Conan looks rather crazed on here. And Adrian Smith does the A cover. I don't know what it is about this cover, but I love it so much. I love the kind of gentle blue of the background. I think Conan's build looks so cool. He is so broad, and he doesn't exactly look as built or as heroic as as John Buscema's Conan or anything like that. It's a really interesting design. I love the armor. I like that weird ab plate there, and I really wanted the Virgin variant cover that doesn't have the title on it at all, and my shop did not carry it, so darn. I'm gonna have to track that down at some point. But issue 12, I guess I would say is a bit of a downturn from issue number 11, but that's just because issue 11 was so stinking good. The A story is called Conan Heart of Darkness. It's by Chris Ryle and Gabriel Rodriguez. And I commented, I had a conversation over on Stygian Dog's YouTube page about how the art didn't really work for me. A couple of people over there really enjoyed it, and I guess I could see why you would. It felt, once again, a little anime inspired to me, so the art style wasn't super... it didn't really resonate with me, but I did really like some of the character designs in it. Some of it was this kind of almost Frank Frazetta, very kind of strange looking alien classic sword and sorcery design for the villains, and that was a really cool time. The B story is a prose story by Fabian Nicieza. I'm not sure on the last name there. It's a Brand McMorn story that's called The Precipice. It was fine. And we finish with a C story. It's an El Borak story. Once again by Patch Zerker, with art by Mirko Kolak. It's called The Curse of the Golden Calf, and it's really cool. It's Pat Zerker, I'm just convinced, is a master of Robert E. Howard adaptations. The art looks really cool, but I'm not sure if my copy is messed up in the printing or if it's everybody's, but the black and white brushstroke look, it's almost kind of faded. It looks a little too light gray, and I think I would stop noticing it after a few panels, but all the panel borders are still just a straight black color, so I don't know if that was a scanning issue or if that's how it's supposed to look, and maybe I'm just a Philistine, but it was a nice finish to the issue. Now I want to rank them all, but with the caveat that Every single issue here I would recommend you pick up. There are no bad issues of Savage Swords so far. There are some stories that are kind of less than others, but that's what's going to happen, man. Especially when you're writing an anthology book where you have a ton of different creators. Not everything is going to knock your socks off, and that is entirely fine. So here is my ranking. In last place, I'm going to have to give it to issue 3. It just felt a little less inspired than some of the other issues. The A story was by far the weakest part of it, and Conan fighting werewolves, it didn't feel as strong as some of the other issues. Next, I would give it to issue number 1. It was a strong enough start, but ultimately the A story doesn't feel as connected or thematic as some of the other ones, and I feel like the ultimate product with how many stories and items are in that issue feels a little bit unfocused. After that, I would put issue 4 next, mostly because it has one singular job to do. It needs to introduce you to all the characters from the Bound in Black Stone event, and that is a big task. That's a lot of balls to juggle, and it ultimately does that task. But it's almost biting off more than it can chew in one issue. It's got just too many characters to introduce, and I feel like the Birthright in Black storyline doesn't function so much on its own as it does in context. And while that's like valid, something can be a part of an overall storyline, I think it works even better if it works on its own in addition to the larger tapestry. After that, I would put issue number 12. Like I said, it feels a little less essential, and the art style didn't really work for me, although it does have some bright spots. Issue 7, after that, I wish I liked it a little bit more, because I do love Roy Thomas so much. But I feel like the art is stronger than the storytelling. And I don't want to say that the pages are wasted looking at Mortal Kombat 1, but it does feel like a little bit of an advertisement is taking up like 2 or 3 pages of this issue. Following that is issue number 8, which is a fantastic artist showcase, but it does have so many pinups and so many things going on. There is not a lot of breathing room in there, so it's one thing after another, and none of it is bad, but none of it reaches the soaring heights of some of the stuff that's further down on this list. Next, we reach issue 10, which is so much fun and had so many cool parts to it. I think this one is carried by that Sailor Steve Costigan story, which is very unique and makes me want more, and it leaves me wanting more. That's always a good sign. And the story, the A story, Twice Paid Debts, is really strong when put into context, as long as you're reading the Conan title too, which you should be. It's a really good book. It's probably even more consistent than Savage Sword. After that is issue number 9, which is there because Patch Zerker is so incredible and Liam Sharp is so incredible, and to put those two guys into one book is a really strong move. I would say at some point Jim Zub is going to move on from Conan, right? He is a creator. He's not going to write Conan for the rest of his life. He is signed on through issue 50 of the current title. I think that takes him through the end of 2027, but at some point he's going to move on. Maybe he'll maybe he'll extend his contract. We don't know. I'd love to see it. But if he does move on, I think you could do so much worse than signing Patch Zerker or Liam Sharp to be the writer of to be the next writer of the regular Conan title, of the regular Conan book. It doesn't seem like Titan wants to do a consistent artist. We've had 4 or 5, maybe 6 artists drawing the Conan book, and they're all pretty good. But it doesn't seem like they just want to have one person with a long run on the art. So it seems like if you did that, you would probably just be hiring Patch or Liam for their writing rather than their art. And I still think you should do it. I still think they're such incredible creators. Coming in our next place is issue number 2, which is what really sold me on the book. Like I said, it was my intro to Jim Zub. And I liked the first issue. Loved the second one. It really nails that Weird Tales feeling. It is horrific and action-packed and full of pathos and emotion in a way that a good story is. And it's not just like, yeah, Conan's a badass or anything like that. Phenomenal art, really cool character designs, really compelling story. It's everything you would want from a Savage Sword issue. Coming in next is issue 11. Tell me you hate it in the comments if you like, but issue 11 was incredible. Liam Sharp's work from beginning to end, a visual treat. A wonderful story. Felt to me, it felt so Conan-y, and it didn't feel high fantasy. It was off-putting and otherworldly and eldritch and all kinds of cool stuff. That some of the coolest fantasy art makes you feel. I would read it again and again. If someone said I can only read one single issue of Savage Sword, what should I read? I'd probably point them to issue number 11. And I'm gonna do something here that might make you mad. I'm not going to give a second place and a first place. I have to give it a tie to issues 5 and 6, the two-parter, The Ensorcelled. This is probably the best Conan story of the 2020s, I would argue. It's thematic. The art is incredible. The story is wonderful. It takes Conan in new directions in ways that I would have argued against if it had been done by a less talented set of creators. It is so cool. I hope to see more Jason Aaron stuff coming up in the future. He is such a great creator. Jeff Isherwood's art. Jeff can come back as many times as he wants. And we will be the ones benefiting from his work. Now, I think issue 12 got delayed a month, so it's only 1 month rather than two until we see issue 13, which features this beautiful cover. One of my favorite Alex Horleys that I've seen so far. Incredible greens. I love the art, love the picture, love the pose. And Roy Thomas is back as well, so let's see if he can reclaim his crown. Tell me what your favorite issues of Savage Sword are in the comments. Tell me if you feel like you have any hot takes, any controversial opinions on some of these issues. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Overall, it's such a good comic series. I can't believe we're 12 issues in. It feels like it's gone really, really fast. And I can't wait to see the next 12. I'll see you guys next time.